At this point, the modern comic book as we know it is just 2 years old. But before we summarize what the industry looks like, let's pull back and look at the world at this time. In Spain, there are free elections, and the left-wing Popular Front coalition wins a majority. Don't expect these things to last. The Spanish Civil War begins not at home, but in Africa, where the deployed army there rebels against its own leadership. In Palestine, Arabs begin to rise up against British rule. The world just shrugs and says, we're still okay with colonialism. And then, gosh, what are these savage Arabs so angry about? In Greece, the prime minister begins to turn towards authoritarian rule. In Africa, Italy crushes the resistance of the Ethiopian Empire. The world just shrugs and says, we're still okay with colonialism. Mussolini announces that Italy is now an empire. The direction Germany was headed in was apparent from the Winter and Summer Olympic Games, both held in Germany that year. For the earlier Winter Games, Germany cleaned up its act a little, taking down a lot of anti-Semitic signs and allowing a Jew to play on their hockey team. The Nazis deliberately acted all polite and charmed the visiting nations, so much so that when Germany violates the Treaty of Versailles just 12 days later by sending armed troops into the Rhineland bordering France, the world just shrugged its shoulders and lets it happen. Sort of a, we're okay with colonialism type thing. Half a year later, the Nazis are ready to show what they were really like at the Summer Games. They successfully blocked Lithuania from participating because of Lithuania's strong anti-Nazi stance. That's right, it's not the United States fiercely denouncing Nazis, it's Lithuania. And try to turn the Olympics into a political rally to demonstrate the superiority of the Aryan race. Today, we all remember how Black American Jesse Owens kicked German butt in track and field and humiliated Hitler. But the inconvenient truth that we often ignore is that Germany still cleans up this year in terms of medals overall. Japan has been occupying Manchuria for the past 5 years, during which time there were multiple skirmishes with China. China, not taking the threat of Japan seriously, has been bogged down in a civil war until last year when they finally got a clue as to what Japan was up to. Japan invades China this year and completely overwhelms the defenses of the capital city. Then Japan's army stays and begins a reign of terror, murder, and rape on such a scale that it remains one of the worst wartime atrocities in world history. In Russia, this doesn't get better. The Great Purge begins with the removal of the Central Party leadership, old Bolsheviks, government officials, and regional party bosses, and they're just getting started. This will also become one of the worst atrocities in world history. Compared to the rest of the world, things seem pretty sane and rational in the US. Much of that is just due to insulation, as we've got an ocean on either side of us protecting us. But there's also this huge entertainment engine working to just build distraction. It's not the comic book field yet involved in that. That's still marginal entertainment, but comic strips are a part of it. They're reaching an audience of millions of people through newspapers. But bigger than that are radio, movies, and Hollywood. And this entertainment industry all feeds each other. Comic strips feed ideas into the system, and then movie stars go on radio to promote their movies, and it all interrelates. This year we got After the Thin Man, the second movie in the Thin Man series, Modern Times, Charlie Chaplin's Last Go as the Little Tramp, and Swing Time, the sixth of the Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers movies. And each of these movies made over $1 million at a time when most people didn't even have $2 to rub together. So the world's on fire, authoritarianism is on the rise everywhere, and Americans are distracted by entertainment, and you let me know if any of this sounds familiar to you. When Americans weren't distracted by entertainment, why weren't they more upset about what was going on in the world? Here, comic books do offer some clues. For one thing, Americans have always been cool with colonialism. We still have colonies today. We just call them territories to make it sound better. And because we're cool with colonialism, it's really hard for Americans to understand it from the other side. So in almost every comic strips featuring Arabs, let's say, like Wing Brady's long serial adventure against the Bedouins, The Bedouins are the bad guys for attacking the British occupiers, and no one questions the British for being there at all. And hand in hand with this is that Americans are racist. I mean, they still are racist today, and maybe you can make a convincing argument that we've just become better at concealing it, but it is never as overt today as it was back in the 1930s. At best, this is a positive image of a black character working an honest job, even though it's the stereotypical porter. This is from National Allied. Comics Magazine, though, takes the cake for most racist comic book company of the time, maybe all time, like minstrel show level racism. To illustrate this, I'm going to show you a grotesquely racist page from Comics Magazine number 3. I in no way endorse or approve of this image, but this is just by way of example. Yes, this is two black men who think they've died and gone to heaven because they just fell out of the sky into a watermelon patch. The comic book industry has grown since 1935. We ended last year with 3 titles from 2 companies, and this year we ended with 10 titles from 6 companies. Comics Magazine came about after splitting off from National Allied. We still don't know the full story about why, but maybe it has something to do with the editors just not feeling comfortable having nowhere to publish their minstrel show gag filler. Eastern Color is still the old man in the game. Famous Funnies is a whopping 30 issues old now. While National and Comics Magazine are producing original material, Eastern Color is reprinting syndicated comic strips, and this is still the business model that looks to be the winner, so much so that big-time publishers like Dell and David McKay are now getting into it, and United Features is the first syndicate reprinting their own comic strips. The books are all anthologies. There's no single feature comic books yet, and that's where we are. And there is great material in these comic books. Not everything, obviously. Some of it is really rough, but there are some real gems here. Anything by Joe Siegel and Jerry Schuster. You're going to keep hearing those names from me over and over again like a broken record. Is head and shoulders above any of the other original material. And this would be not Superman yet, obviously, but Dr. Occult, Federal Men Calling All Cars. But there's also good cartoony fun by John Patterson and Joe Baresh at Comics Magazine that I've talked about. And we've seen the first published writing work by Will Eisner at Comics Magazine. And we're going to be talking about him a lot in the future, too. His writing's a little rough at the start, but he's going to be drawing his own features soon, and he's going to become very good very fast. If I had to pick favorites from the reprinted material being as we've seen so far, it would probably be Captain Easy, obviously, Dixie Dugan, Dickie Dare, Joe Palooka, Jane Arden, Don Winslow of the Navy, and White Boy in Skull Valley. 2 of those I haven't even talked about yet, so you'll be hearing about Dickie Dare and Don in 1937. And that's a wrap for 1936. If you've enjoyed these so far, please do like and subscribe to this channel. You will also be able to support this channel through Patreon. See the link below, and sign up through the website, not through the Apple Store where they charge you a 30% tax on your donations. But thanks for everything that you do, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.